Stop scowling.
Well, welcome back to Quantum Living Conversations. I'm Deirdre Catlin, and this is part 2 of an amazing conversation with Merrill T. And Bandit's in the background now. He's joined us. And your cat names are?
Mojo and Mystic.
Of course. Awesome. So, if you haven't listened to the first podcast, we were talking about Merrill's flying career, and we were ending up at the U2. We talked about focus. And after your flying career, you ended up in the Inspector General's office.
I did. I ended up in the I started working in the IG office at the wing level when I came back to Beale as the Deputy Ops Group Commander. Mm-hmm. So I was working in that job probably about nine months or so. And then I got moved over to the Wing Inspector General. Hold on, my husband is looking at me. Probably 50 minutes? Yes. So I moved over to the Wing IG, Inspector General. And then at that point, I thought I was going to retire. And that did not happen. There was a last minute audible, and I ended up going to DC as the Director of Inspections for the Inspector General. So I worked directly for the 3-star.
And so, big overview, your quality control, is that probably the best? Making sure programs and processes are correct?
It's not quality control.
Vetting complaints?
Yeah, so the Wing IG, it does everything. So there's two sides. There's the inspection aspect, whether you're doing whatever kind of inspections on the base. And then you also have a complaint side. So almost from a human resource aspect, if you have some kind of problem, you can do an IG complaint. You can do an IG complaint. Hello, dear. And if it's like equal opportunity, we vet, we put that somewhere else. But the complaint could be anything. So we're that arm outside of the wing that evaluates people. So when you look at like the police force, what is it? Internal affairs? We're like internal affairs of the Air Force and of the military.
And so part of your going over there or wanting to get out was you were starting a family, correct?
Yes. So
talk to me a little bit about that, because there's I don't think people talk about that with women in the military, and then as we get older, maybe our priorities change. And how did you reconcile all that?
So
or still reconciling?
It is. It's a constant progress. It's a constant thing I think about. So I smile when a lot of women say you have to, balance life, right? Got to balance your family. I don't say that. I say it's controlled chaos. There are just times when the family becomes more important, the mission becomes more important. In the military, it's very hard because the mission comes first. The mission is on the forefront. I don't care how they package it. The mission is the mission, and it is number one. Okay. So that means if you're, a person who wants to have a family, it could be man or woman, and you have two people who are career people, someone's going to have to give. It's just inevitable. Someone is going to have to give. and who that is, it's between you and your spouse on how that works and how it ends up. For me, I knew, okay, so I'm still looking at this again in the back of my mind. It's like astronaut going to space. I didn't at that time think, I thought I was going to stop at lieutenant colonel. I was not sure I was going to make colonel. My record was good. I didn't know how good. I had no idea. My timing was off when I came back as the deputy ops group commander because I only had 6 months before my performance report for my in the zone look was going to happen. And during that whole process, I was told I was going to do a 365 of some sort, and I got hit with that. I got hit with a 365 to go to Afghanistan. So I knew that was coming. It was my turn because, you know, X amount of people. This is business. There's nothing personal about it. But I had to make a choice. So at that time, I was eligible to retire. I was going to be beyond 20 years. My son just turned 2 years old. And at that point, I knew that my 2-year-old son, and you remember I grew up in a single parent household, would probably need me more than the Air Force would need me. And that was a hard decision. I won't say it was a hard decision. It was just, at the time, if my son was 5, maybe he would not have needed me as much. But I knew at 2 years old, he was going to need me. And I made that decision that it was not worth it to stay in the military any longer. So I had 3 days to decide. On my son's 2nd birthday, I hit decline, and I knew that triggered a retirement orders. So, you know, people are faced with that all the time. When I made this decision, I had talked with my husband, and, you know, he's a reservist. He's in the Navy Reserves. He works at Lawrence Livermore. He's doing his things, and he had made certain comments that made me think, okay, well, I need to be more of the parent that stays at home with Flynn at this time. So that's why that was my decision. So we'll fast forward. That was at the end of 2014. That was in October. No, it was November, because I declined November 20th, my son's birthday. So you fast forward to February when the colonel results come out. I get selected. And I was pretty shocked at that. Yeah, well, I was shocked because I actually didn't want to go to work that day. I was mad as I was driving. I was like, man, I don't want people to tell me, oh, I'm so sorry you didn't make it. Quite frankly, I didn't want to hear that garbage. Like I just didn't want to go to work anyway. So I almost turned around and went home. I was like, maybe I could call in sick or something. Anyway, so but I got selected, which was great. And at that point, I knew I had to make another decision, but I knew nothing was going to change. So, you know, on to retirement. You fast forward probably around July or August of 2015, and I get a call from the front office. The front office is where the wing works, and you have the executive staff there. And they say that my boss's boss, who was a 2-star, wanted to speak to me. And I didn't know why. I thought it was for an IG related issue, an inspector general related issue, but no, he wanted to speak to me. So I get on his calendar. We have a talk, and he's trying to figure out, you know, why am I turning down 06? Why am I retiring? He just wants to hear my story. He, you know, just wants to listen to me. So we have this discussion, and he says, well, maybe we'll, you know, it's kind of funny. I smile now because he kind of talks in this like very cryptic mafioso way. He's like, if you don't hear from me, you'll retire, but we'll be in touch. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then the next day, there was some letters and some correspondence at the upper levels and a desire to keep me in. And they were willing to work with me because they knew I was trying to keep my family unit intact.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that wasn't going to happen because business is business. The Air Force, they have a mission. But obviously there was a way to work that where we could go to the Pentagon. My husband actually worked at the Joint Staff at that point. He actually went on active duty orders. And then I ended up working out there. So it was a good win-win for everyone, except for the fact that I didn't take a 365. So, and I thought about that hard. And I talked about that with my wing commander because, at that point, if you're not taking this, someone else is going to get hit with that.
Right.
So what does that look like? And, I agonized with that a little bit, but then as I talked it through, I knew there were other factors out there. There was a reason why they asked me to stay longer. There was a reason why the military was willing to make me put in the work in another capacity. And I said, okay, I'll take it. Because at first I was like, I'm not going to do that. But then,
Well, from my perspective, if you're looking at the business, I think it's cool that your boss sat you down and asked really what you needed, right? How can we make this work? Because not many people make colonel, and then not many quality people with character make colonel, and you're losing this huge experience and depth of perspective that you have based on your unique career path. And so kudos to your boss for sitting down and figuring out, okay, how do we make this work?
Right. So we go back to coming into the U2 community, coming into the Air Force. How do you brand yourself, right? So how do you make yourself set apart from others? I did it unknowing what it was at the time, but you're right. So you look at this, and I joke about this sometimes when I speak to people. You look at the fact that I have military and Air Force background, so I'm bilingual. As a female, you got to look at the physical attributes. Okay, I'm a black female, right? So I can't change that, folks. This is what it is. Don't hate me. I'm just using what I got. So, and I'm not even, I'm just being me. So, you have those things, but then you look at my career. I was at the Joint Staff, so I was JSO qualified. I had my command. I did a command. So I had all these things. There were no special allowances. They wanted to keep someone quality in that fit a whole bunch of things. And at the end of the day, there's a minimum, and I say there's always a minimum requirement that you have to get to be somewhere, especially as you go up the chain. And I definitely exceeded that minimum requirement. So the fact of my swagger or who I am made me more appealing, then so be it.
Well, and the cool thing about you is you did it following a path from a dream.
Yes.
And these things fell into place, and you went to go get them, right? You kind of merged, versus we all know those officers or those leaders that have the pocket checklist, like that's in their back pocket. And I'm like, I'm just here to check this box, right? Like there's an authenticity that you're coming from that I'm glad got recognized and people wanted to make work out for you.
Right. So I'm not a box checker, but I am aware of what the requirements are. Right.
Well,
so
and any good officer should be, right? Like you can't expect to be a millionaire and not look at your budget, right? Like you have to know what you're doing.
you've got to be aware, but I did have that goal, but I also I'm bumping it up against reality, right? I'm
Mhm.
not saying, like some people say, I'm not doing air command and staff college, and then they'll be mad that they don't make major.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
bro, there's a minimum requirement. You didn't do it. You didn't do what was required.
Right.
So so like, I'm bucking the system. I'm like, no, you're burying yourself. So there is, yeah, I had to think about it. And I remember with my commander, when this was all starting to transform very quickly, this, like when I talked to the 2-star, actually he made his 3rd star. He was actually talking to me en route of him picking up his 3rd star and PCSing.
Mm.
So number one, he showed this general, one, took the time out, took a half an hour to 45 minutes of his time to talk to someone that he had never met, saw their information on paper, and thought it was important enough to call in the middle of his move, in the middle of his promotion.
Right.
And that told me that you have people at the top, the 1-stars, 2-stars, 3-stars, 4-stars, that really, really care. And they care, and they're going to do stuff within their grasp. And I find that when I went to the Pentagon, I would tell people my story. But I also knew, as I talked to more generals, I found that a lot more of them cared than were there just to stroke their egos. There were
That's nice to know.
generals who truly, yeah, that there were generals who truly wanted to do good things. I'm not saying they're the way they went about it was right, but they cared, and for the most part, they cared about their people, and they wanted to see them do well. And you could tell as in the Pentagon, you work and you network. So I networked a lot just because we were in the IG office, and I think people were not afraid of our office, but they were leery of our intentions.
Mm.
So I made a point to go and talk to people. Um, yeah, so I found that, yeah, there's a lot of politics in that building, but there are some people who really want to make a difference, and they try really hard. It's just you're working against the industrial complex, so it's very hard to do a lot in there.
Right.
But there are people who get up every day and they try, and I appreciated that. That
Well,
gave
and I
me a
think
better.
I think that's a great point that you're bringing out, because it's so easy to get jaded as you trickle down in the ranks, right? Like,
Right.
it's very easy to throw darts, and it's nice to know. And I think it's something we could probably use a lot more in the society of people's intent is genuinely good. It comes from a good place. How they go about it, whatever, how much control they have to make change may not be what they wish, or maybe their thinking might be a little bit off. That's like, how did you not know that that was the outcome?
Yes. But just for my 2 years there, I just felt that there were, and I had a lot of talks there. Sometimes I would just roll up on 1-stars or 2-stars. I'm like, hey, let me come by your office and talk. And they'd be like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Merrill. I would have some conversations. So it was good. And then the I'll call him my mentor now. He's a 3-star. He's now in the building at the Pentagon. So him and we would have lunch, and then we would talk.
Mm.
So that was great to learn more about him. Because our first conversation, when he wanted to know about me, I got to know a little bit about him. So it was awesome. I mean, he's very smart and just very insightful.
Well, I love that you talked about not being afraid to go to the general's desk and have that conversation. I think direct communication is probably super key.
It is, and
It,
it's
it's a lost art.
it is a lost art. People want to talk on email, and quite frankly, not that I'm uncomfortable with talking on email, but my tone of type could be very abrupt, because I worry about being very succinct, and I want to make sure there's no room for error. I don't want you to misinterpret. So I him and haw over this email. Then I go, oh, is it too hard? Do I have to make it softer? Like I lose my mind over it. And I'm like, damn it, Merrill, just get up and go over there and talk to them, and then follow it up with an email so we know what the intent is. But one of the examples when I was in the building, there's a lady, and I know people in the building. I don't know if she's still there, but they call her Miss Z. Ms. Z is probably one of the more powerful civilians, if not the most powerful in that building, right? So I was fascinated because Ms. Z is a she, and I was like, dude, I got to speak to her. Like, people were in awe of her, and she was this very small stature woman who would walk in. She was probably no more than 5'3", and she walk in and people would brace, and I was so fascinated. And I would watch, and she would talk, and she was very kind. She was very nice. She was soft with her words, but you could tell the fear that it generated in a lot of people. And I'm like, I got to talk to her. So I went to her office, and I was the secretary, and she was the secretary, and I'm like, I got to talk to Ms. Z. They're like, well, what for? I'm like, mentorship. I'm like, I need to get me some of this mentorship. What's going on? I want to talk to her. And I talked to the deputy first, and we got on good terms. We were in a couple of meetings, so I got to speak to him. But then eventually I got to go to her office and just have a half-hour session with her several times, and found out like she's a New Yorker. Found out that she likes, I don't know if she liked, I think beers were her thing. Like, we would talk and just, I just wanted to absorb like how her mind was working, and it was great. But yeah, no fear. You walk in the office, I need to. Secretary's looking at me like, why are you in here? I'm like, I want a meeting.
I love that you're talking about it, because for me, it would be, I would call it for myself just a naivete. Like, cool, you put on your pants just the same as I do. Like, let's
Right,
have a conversation. Who are you? What do you do? Like, you're general? Cool. Is that important?
Right. So not, yeah. So
I wasn't that naive, but it's kind of that same thing of like, I know you poop. We all do.
We all do. Yeah. So, but I looked up her bio, and I was like, what's interesting in her career that I can ask her about? And you do a little bit of research. You find out, what she's done and why. But it was just good. And she was one of a few that I talked to in there. I would talk to, if I would talk to women, I would talk to minorities. Like there was a 1-star there who was on the logistics side. I had to speak to him. We had to talk, and we had this huge conversation about, at that time, about Tesla and how it's going to try to infiltrate the market of Ford and GMC and all this, and why will it be hard to become mainstream? I mean, we would have these discussions, or I would talk to my 3-star mentor about Elon Musk. We would have all these interesting discussions, and it just made me, and I would ask him questions. I would ask him things that I would notice, or he would point out things to me at that level. Like, when you look at the chief of staff of the Air Force, and maybe some of the connections that he has with other people and how they all know each other and how they've networked. Mm-hmm. Or when I met, at the time was General Dunford. I met him at a pin-on ceremony for a flight dock, and him and I got to talk a little bit. And he's, a very nice man. And you see at that level, you see these connections with people, because it's so, at the top, there's just so many few. So they've all been to school with one another at one point. Mm-hmm. They all have relationships with one another. And if you can understand those relationships between those people, and how your boss has relationships with all those other generals, then it helps you navigate better. So if your general doesn't like this other general, they don't say it, but they're gentlemanly about it, and they hate each other, you know that how am I going to work? How am I going to work this to get um, my publication signed off
Mhm.
without having to go back and redo this for another 2 months because they can make it painful. So you start learning those things and learning what likes and dislikes. So it was very eye opening and it was good. And I would, as much as they had their doors open for me to talk, my door would be equally as open for anyone else who wanted to come in and speak to me. And I had a lot of people who wanted mentorship, who were captains who wanted to talk. Or I would talk to my peers if I had someone in my office that I needed to move somewhere. And
Mm.
you would work those things. So yes, it was a good experience.
And I love that you're bringing up, because it's a great segue to how one of the things I did appreciate, especially at pilot training, was the storytelling and how much learning can happen within sharing your unique stories and mistakes as well as successes.
Oh yeah.
Um, and just so much learning. And I was just thinking of how astute of you to like seek that out for yourself, because that's something I'm noticing in the civilian side, working on, you know, self-employed. I'm the only one in my business, and it's like I need some more people to like make my brain bigger. I need to make those connections to up level my game and make me look at things in a different, or help me look at things in a different level than my comfort zone.
Right. You, I, I hate to go back to exploring, but you're always exploring. How do
Hmm.
you explore that unknown? That's it's
So I
very
have
important.
a couple questions. One, you wanted to be a pilot from 7,
Yeah.
or astronaut from 7 on. Single parent, so you raised yourself, kind of latchkey kid. I'm not saying your parents were, they were absent
Yeah,
or
yeah,
anything,
yeah, yeah.
but there's a
Mhm.
lot of internal drive. Where does that come from for you? Growing up in the Bronx too, right? Like I grew up in Maine,
Right.
so I have my opinion or my vision of what that's like. How, like, where does that come from of this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to do it?
I'm still I'm still exploring that answer. So I am because there are days when I look back on my career, or I look back and I go, holy crap. Yeah, I did that. Like it just happened. So I'm still exploring. I could say a little bit of it was really just at a young, a little bit of it is like I'm just really fascinated in the unknown. I just really like it doesn't, sometimes it scares people. And I'm not saying it doesn't scare me, um, but I don't let that fear or anxiety like stop me. Like I kind of thrive in that area. Like, oh, that feeling, oh, I don't like it, but yeah, let's do it. Like I get like that. So it's at that moment, like you just push through. Some of it is, yeah, I was made fun of a lot when I was growing up because I just wasn't like the other kids.
Right.
Yeah, I like to play sports. A lot of girls, young girls like to play sports. They call tomboys or whatever. And I didn't like that. I was made fun of incessantly as a child. And it pissed me off. So I think some of it could be some anger. Um, I Some of my friends know that I can have a pretty good angry streak if need be. They're more worried about it if I don't say anything because they know something's about to go down bad. So, um, but as a kid, when no one's listening to you and you're just frustrated, I think that builds some type of fire and it's a fuel for you and a catalyst to show people that they were wrong about you. So I do acknowledge that as a kid that the things that they did or make fun of me or ostracize me for, that was bottled up, and I was like, yeah, when I'm older you'll see.
Right. And
Right.
I totally get that too, because I think it was second grade where the 7th graders called me a tomboy, and I'm like, okay, but I could tell it didn't mean something nice. So I went home and asked. My mom told me what it was. I'm like, okay, I like to, okay, cool. But why are they being mean about it? I don't understand. I already mastered hopscotch. I mastered Foursquare. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Like,
I mastered the playground and the merry-go-round. Like, this
yeah,
is
I
the
want
next
to
thing.
let me throw a ball and hit a ball with a bat,
Let
or
me
let
play
me
with the
kick a
boys.
ball.
They're making me run faster. They're like, and
Yeah.
I needed to exercise, right? Like, I can't even imagine school nowadays if I was in a classroom. But
No, I mean, you wonder why kids are running around tearing stuff up at recess. Look, my son, don't get me started. He's an impulsive child. He gets on the playground. I'm like, bro, you got to dial it back, or we're gonna be you getting you evaluated.
one of the things, and I love you talk about the exploring part, because I don't think I put words to myself that is, or that energy or that type of, I don't know, exploration of the world is I recognize that having a dream or the goal of being a pilot kept me in that exploration box growing up, to where I didn't get into too much trouble, right? Like,
Right.
I knew this was a goal, so
Yes.
my experimenting part was kept in check.
Yes. I think if anything would have been a showstopper for me, it would have probably been in college. I probably did some things where I stepped outside the line, like disregarding the goal and doing some things where, I didn't get in trouble for, and I still had a clearance, so
Or
we're
didn't
good.
get caught for, right?
I didn't get caught for.
And
So
I think it was, freshman year, where it's like, wait a minute, this isn't where I want to be. Like,
yeah, I did.
this is not fun enough to, like, let that dream die. Like,
No, I did some things in my junior year where I will I will just say this. I use my powers for good. I've always have. There was a mischievous side of me, but nothing was bad. But I did, yeah. Anyway,
my powers were good.
I use my powers for good.
You talked about being a female African American in a military where I don't even know what the numbers are. I know for pilots, it's about 10 to 12% for women. Now I don't even know how small that demographic is. Did you feel any added pressure going through your career because
Yes,
of that?
yes. I will tell you one of the reasons. So when I made colonel in the Air Force, at that time there were 2 Black females who were rated pilots in the at the senior leadership level, because when you make 06, you're considered a senior leader. So it was only 2 of us. Me, I just made it, and at that time, General Harris, who just retired last year. So there were only 2 of us, and it's interesting that the military talks about diversity, and I'm not saying every branch of service, but it's hard to talk about diversity for like years, and there's still no one there. So you have to ask yourself why, and there's a lot of reasons why. Some people, they have children. Women have kids. Men can't have kids at this time. So when women have children, they're more apt to want to stay home, because I understand it. I felt that. You want to stay home with kids at a younger age. You want to be there. You want to help guide them and do all that stuff. People go on to other things. So women, I don't know if they ever explore that when they talk about the numbers. We just say that there are not a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is, in order, say I didn't pick up colonel, or I decided to retire, and I just retired and I didn't pin off. The amount of time it would take to groom someone to even possibly get to that point, I think the closest person to me who was a rated pilot was probably about 7 years out. So it's maybe 7 or so. And I'm not talking about reservists. I'm just talking about active duty.
Right.
I'm not talking about guards or any guardmen, National Guard or anything. So, it takes a long time to groom someone if they want to do it, if they can make it. And then once they're there, how do you keep someone there? So those were things that I was not aware of, but then I became made aware as I was trying to figure out, you figure out, why me? Why are you, why does the 3-star want to talk to me? Why? Okay, what's going on in the picture that I'm not seeing? Because all I see is my son, I see aircraft, what else is going on? And that brought it a little bit more in perspective.
Did you feel pressure in how you acted or?
So, yeah, you feel pressure all the time. And I talked about that a little bit last year in Alabama. It's hard being a Black female, or it's hard being a minority or a woman, sitting at the table with a majority of men in the room. You feel like when you say something, every word that you say is going to be evaluated. It feels like a check ride over and over with your words. And and I'm speaking from how I feel about it. If you say something that is not correct, not factually correct, if you say something that is emotional, if you come across as being buffoonist, they're going to hold that not only against you, but against the rest of your gender or race. And that's how you feel. I think this is the burden, because I'm not the only one who feels that way. I've had other minorities, whether it be, Hispanic, Black men or women, say, I'm always, there's a level of anxiety when I'm in a meeting or I'm studying or I'm in Air War College or we're having a discussion, that you want to come off, dare I say it, you want to come off articulate and smart and very thoughtful and a critical thinker, because you don't want people to think otherwise, because you don't want them to hold that against you or hold that against other people who look like you. And that's just being real.
I caught myself doing that at Moody with, because I became the only female instructor pilot, right, after everybody moved.
Right.
And then I started recognizing, okay, who's this new person coming in? Who's this new girl coming in? Don't screw it up for all the hard work that I put into place to be, qualified and the go-to and the whatever. And I'm like, holy smokes. I don't think that's how I want to be. Like, I'm judging, like I'm prejudging. And that took a little bit of, I had to catch myself doing that. Like, that's not how I want to be. I want to be welcoming, like, come on in. Right. And then luckily I got that in the Guard with going into the Guard with the women, regardless of rank, pulled me aside as a captain and was like, okay, here's how life works, to the point of someone was giving me dating advice for the local area. And I'm like, did my dad call you?
So
how did he call ahead?
So, I remember in flight school, one of the things that happened, in the Navy, it was a hard recruitment for minorities to be pilots with, technical backgrounds to be pilots. And there was a large group of minorities in the program. And I was one of 5, maybe Black females that were going through at the time in the 90s, 95. And I was the only one that completed. 2 of them got medically disqualified because they blew their eardrums out. The other 2 did not complete because performance.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's put that aside. And then there were some other women who were Caucasian, who were white, who were also going through the program. And I remember one of them was having performance issues. The other one was doing well and would always talk about how she wanted jets. And I remember that, and I think you understand this. I think I get along well with the guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cool. I'm like one of the guys. So sometimes guys will misspeak around me. They will slip up, and I see the true thing.
Yep.
They do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I I don't, is it sexist or is it racist? I don't look at it that. I think it's being real and I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I know what it is and I know how other that, and that tells me that's a small section of what maybe other people may feel. Not necessarily. And I remember they talked about the one uh, white lady who was talking about getting jets, and they would always complain about how she's going to get jets because she's a female and she's not really that good. And at that time, you know, as a student, you're just listening to this. And I'm like, in my mind, going like, how do you know she's not good? You're not in the freaking plane with her.
Mm.
But there's all this hate. There's all this hate coming at her. And then you have, you know, these other Black women who too are struggling with performance, and you'll hear these things, oh, you know, the way they say it, oh, well, she's getting her third ride and she's only supposed to get two, but she's getting, you know, this one was incomplete. And you can hear the insinuation that she's getting extra privilege. And that, I'm like, maybe she just sucks. Because when I was an instructor, I didn't care who the student was. If I knew the student was trying so hard and he was so terrible,
Yep.
I'd be like, and I knew something was wrong, maybe something was a little bit off with the aircraft, I'd come home early and I'd be like, this is an incomplete flight. And the reason why is because you need an extra full flight. I think we can get this together.
Right?
And
It's
that,
working within the system for any student
yes, you're working within
who
the
had
system.
potential to complete, right? Like,
Yes, have
yep.
potential to complete. Or
Yep.
some students, I'd be like, you did well. I'm going to hook you for this ride because I want you to get another one. And they said, I would say, I would actually give them a choice. I'd be like, I can hook you for this ride. You may or may not pass, but let's fly again and we'll see where it goes.
Yep.
And they'd be like, please hook me. And I'm like, perfect. And I'd hook them, we'd go fly again, and then they would do well in their check ride.
Yep.
So you're working within the system. And I think at that time, even though they were recruiting more minorities because you want diversity, you want people, I definitely think you want people at the table with you making decisions that come from different economic backgrounds, social backgrounds, different races. I think that's very true and it's very helpful. But when you looked at it in that environment in the 1990s, all you would hear is like haters hating, like, oh, well, she's a female, she's getting this extra stuff. No, she's just a student that they're just trying to make better. They know the overarching, hey, we need diversity, but it would be no different if, say, a white male was having difficulty, and there were plenty of them that were having difficulty, and in completing a flight so they can get another flight so they can be that much better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was aware of it. I didn't want to be one of those people lumped into that category.
Yep.
And I wasn't, because I didn't have any problems in flight school. I did well in flight school. But I had a very hard on wing who was on my butt all the time. He cursed me out every time we got in the cockpit for 2 hours. He was in my ear just telling me how terrible that approach was. You know, so he expected, and he didn't look at me because of my gender or my race. He looked at me as a student that had potential, that could do better. And he was going to squeeze it out of me, whether I either did it or just fell apart, which I'm glad it didn't fall apart. But so yeah, it was hard because people had this perception of you. People looked at you and said, "Oh, you're another quota for the military." So they looked at you and they had that opinion. You worked with instructors who worked at the sim, who were these old guys from the Vietnam era. They had that perception of you. So yeah, you were treated a little differently, a little harsher. But then you had some instructors, like my instructor, who treated me harshly because he was a jerk to everyone, and
Right.
he treated all his students the same. He expected perfection all the time.
Yep.
Period. I mean, we still keep in touch. So he came to my retirement ceremony. So
That's so cool.
yeah. So
how do you think you create that change? You were talking about sitting at the table and still feeling it, you know, later in life. How do you think that change happens?
how do you think I can get that to change, to stop? I have
Well,
not.
yeah. How do we? Is there a way to create change, or is it just? And how do you not internalize it?
I think you'll always internalize it. I think you will. I said this at the Gathering at Eagles event when I was talking to one of the majors who interviewed me. I told her, so you got to suck it up. It's just something you're going to feel for the rest of your life.
Mm.
You're going to always feel that when you're in a room with high caliber people and you're in a room where people expect the best of you all the time, I think it's at that level, you're always going to internalize something.
Mm.
And you're always going to, you may be harder on yourself than the room is being hard on. And you want to represent all the time. When you want to work at those higher levels, I don't see how you don't get around it. You can't let it dictate how you react in a room if you don't measure up to your own bar. You can't let people see that.
Mm.
But I don't. I'm trying to figure out how you could get around that, and I have not seen a way yet. Even as a, I mean, quite frankly, even now I do personal training, and it's still a level of knowledge that you have to have, a level of professionalism, a level of how people perceive you. I still keep that same bar.
Mm.
It's a little bit more relaxed because in my mind, you know, I'm dealing with some people who are owners, business owners, small business owners, some people who are work at the executive level, some people that do mergers and acquisitions. So they perform at this high level. So I know what it's like to perform at that high level. So I keep it at that level, and they appreciate that. So it keeps me on my toes, and um, I don't. It's a feeling that is normal to me now, so it doesn't cause me anxiety. It
That's
gets me
cool.
hyped up, yeah, but it I think if you want to perform at those levels, you're gonna always feel that in certain ways, and you want to always represent so the person coming behind you doesn't have to work that hard. But if they screw up, oh, you're gonna hear it from me. Like
Right.
I'd be like, yo, let me holler at you for a second. Oh, what? You're screwing up. Stop. You know, and
But
that's how it feels.
there's a couple points that you're bringing up that kind of reminds me of like when we were younger and maybe more naive, right? Like some of those things. I just remember, hey, I want to be a pilot. 1980. My parents went and was like, "Oh, the women are allowed to," and I'm just like, "What? That? Of course they are. Why wouldn't they?" Right? So we're kind of
Yeah.
bridging that gap of we grew up with a naivete of something that was like, "Well, this is what I'm going to do." I mean, 50 years ago, Amelia Earhart did it, so why can't I?
Yeah.
Um, but I also remember in high school, a junior high or high school as a junior, one of my classmates was like, "Women can't be pilots." And it's like, "Oh, well, thank you, Ben. That stoked my fire a little bit." Um,
Yeah.
and and so there's this thing of like when we're kind of in that younger phase, like when you're pioneering through something, you are going to face that, and just remember that you're facing you're charting new territory, coupled with that knowing yourself and increasing that performance. Like you said, your bar is almost always going to be higher if you're trying to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Right. So it is. It's going to be higher, and I think when I was when I came into the personal training business, the gym that I work at now, this is a good one. The the person who was a bunch of other trainers there, a few trainers, not a lot. I was hired. And I was excited because I'm like, yay, my first civilian job. I got my job. Yay. You know, I got my dream area I went to work with. And this gentleman came up to me, and his wife worked there. and she was a trainer, and she performed very well. She has a very good following. She's got a lot of people. Great. And we didn't gel very well. Don't know why, I really don't care. But we didn't gel well. And her husband came up to me probably my first month at working in the job. And he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, I want to ask you something." I'm like, "Yeah." And he says, "You're retired?" And I go, "Yes, I'm retired." And he goes, then his next words were, "So you don't really need this job?" And I said, "Let me stop you right there." So, military Merrill is about to come out. And I said, number one, I want to be a personal trainer. I am a personal trainer. I enjoy this job. Number two, doesn't matter what my background is, doesn't matter where I came from. I will work equally as hard in this job than I worked in any other job that I've done before in my military career. He just looked at me and I raised my eyebrow. And that's fact. It is a fact. I worked hard. People were telling me, "Oh, it's going to take 2 years to build a clientele." And I would look at them and smirk, go, "Oh, thanks for the advice." I was like, you have no idea at that level that I will work at to build a clientele.
Mm.
In 6 months, I had a clientele.
Nice.
It's just, it's like, you have these non-military people that are trying to box you into something. Oh, they'll take a while. You can't do this. Can't do that. Really? And then in my mind, I'm like, watch me. Like it's that fire. Like, yeah, now I'm gonna work even harder now. And doesn't matter if I need the job or not. I'm gonna perform the best that I can.
Mm.
I don't, that's my end state is to train people and to inspire people through training and fitness. And if they had read that about me in my brochure, he would have never come to me with that nonsense.
Military Merrill with raised eyebrow.
Yeah. I was like, oh.
Oh no, I had a train of thought. Oh no. So talk about we have the opportunity to inspire kiddos, right? And I think that's my favorite
Yes.
group. I
Yes.
just spoke with a kiddo, a 16-year-old, and because I think one of the things that pilot training taught me was I can still learn from my students. You start off in the place of I'm supposed to know everything as the instructor, and then it quickly comes down to, oh, wait a minute, I'm still learning too as I'm instructing.
Right.
And so that's why I love talking with the young kids and hearing what their life is about. And one of the things that they pointed out was, I guess the way school is doing it, or at least in our district, is they have to like know what they're doing when they grow up. So they're like being boxed in. You have to have a plan and know what you're doing by the time you graduate. I only was in that position because I knew what I wanted and I knew I needed to go to college, right? Like there was a
Right.
path to get where I was going. So one of the cool things I got to talk to them about is like, they had a dream of wanting to do multiple things. And it's like, you have that opportunity, especially in your 20s, to do that. And we just covered how they could meet all of their dreams and things they wanted to dabble in all at the same time. What do you find talking with kiddos, and what's your advice to the youngins these days, especially in the unknown world?
Right. So a couple things. I like what I enjoy. So I say that I'm an inspirational trainer, right? So I like to use fitness as an avenue to talk to people, or more of an avenue. Because when I work out, especially with young adults that are from 15 to about 25,
Mm-hmm.
in that range, I love working out with them. Number one, because I see what their physical, they learn some things about training. Well, it also, I don't know, to me, it breaks down a little bit of barriers in terms of being able to have real talk with them. And they're more apt when you're in the gym, yeah, they're more apt to be open, and they're more apt to be receptive of your feedback, even as critical as it may be. Because you worked out in the gym sometimes, and you have that gym talk, right? It's like it's that real talk as you're lifting. And if you're pissed off about it, go put some more weights on the side and bench some more if you're angry about it. When I talk to them, a lot of them want to, especially in their 20s, a lot of people I've talked to want to be in the military. They want to fly. I have one gentleman who wants to fly helicopters for the Army. One young lady who put in her package for the Navy for the pilot program will probably get picked up. I have a couple of other young people who are still trying to figure their way out, but we just talk. And I think my advice for them, we always talk about what's happening and what maybe the future will be. And it's about just making sure whatever goals or whatever desires you want to do, just kind of look at what the environment, the current state is, or what the future state may be. And because you don't want to set yourself up for major disappointment. You don't want to set yourself up for, hey, I want to work in the airlines, and then 4 years later, there's no airline jobs because COVID has kind of put a stop to that. Or hey, I want to work, or hey, I want to work in the healthcare industry. That may be great right now because we may need more healthcare workers. Or maybe you're not thinking about it, or it, you just got to bump that up against reality. You got to be able to say, are my goals in line with what the current situation is doing? And if the answer is yes, then keep going and kind of routinely just be honest with yourself about it. Or talk to someone through that. Talk to someone who's been there, done that. Ask them what it's like in that field right now to make sure that in 2 years, there'll be some jobs available for you. If you don't, you'll set yourself up for major disappointment. For those kids that are younger, like my son's age, they're 7, 8, and 9, I just want them to have I want them to say something. Like if I say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they go, oh, no. I'm like, really? There's nothing that interests you right now? Video games. Okay, what about video games? What do you like? Do you like playing Fortnite? What do you like? And some kids can't answer that, and it drives me nuts. But it's because I was 7 and
right.
We knew what we wanted, so I have to.
It's hard for us to have the perspective of that because a lot of people don't, right? Like in my household, I was the only sibling that knew this is where I was going. So,
right.
To watch my siblings be like, well, I still don't know. What?
I truly have to I have to dial myself back because I want to jump and do things, and that's a part of like also being a parent. You can't do that. You got to let people find out for themselves, flounder, have their own path. Part of their path, maybe they're floundering for a while. It's kind of painful to watch, but I always tell my son life lessons, right? So, like if he does something wrong and I tell him don't do it and he hurts himself and he comes to me crying and I look at him and there he is. And I go, life lesson. Hold on 1 second. He's coming over here.
Who's this, Mom?
Hi there.
That's Miss D. Hey, say hi.
Hi, Miss D.
Hi. What's your name?
Okay.
Flynn. Nice to meet you.
And can I tell you something?
Certainly.
My mom's birthday is coming up, and my teacher's birthday is the day before it.
So you've got a bunch of birthdays coming up. Are you doing something special? I won't tell her.
Can you get out of here, Mama?
No, I can't. I gotta finish up this interview, okay?
Please, no, just for a couple of seconds.
No.
No, Mama, please, it's just for a couple of seconds.
Do you mind if I leave?
I don't mind. That's quite awesome.
He's gonna say something. All right.
So me and my dad are making my mom. We made her a necklace just a couple of seconds ago,
No way.
and we're gonna make her a cake.
Wow. How many candles is it gonna have?
Um, she's 48, so we're gonna 49. So we're gonna get some candles that have
We are? Okay.
and a line on it.
Wow. That sounds like a great
She's
plan.
turning 40.
Well, so nice to
Okay.
meet you.
But he's coming back, so we're gonna head out.
See you later.
Bye. Bye.
All right, I'm back.
I know something you don't know.
Uh,
So cute.
uh,
So he seems to be doing okay.
he's doing okay during COVID. He's as you see, he's like me. He just comes in and just starts talking to people.
Right? Hey, General.
Like-
I know it's your office, but this is my
Yeah,
chair.
he's like, "Hi, I'm Flynn."
So
No,
cute.
what? Just starts,
Well, happy birthday in advance.
thank you. When you
What-
said that, I was like, "Why do you tell people that?"
because it's the best thing that happens.
Yeah.
So as you switch multiple cultures growing up in your military, what did you learn about how to navigate through different cultures?
Yeah, first when I was going to instruct with the Air Force, I had the premise that the Air Force and Navy did things. They trained people the same. That's what I came in with, that assumption, and I left with, no, they do not. And they're not bad. Neither one is good or bad. They're just different.
Yep, I agree, and I think that's what I learned from listening to you guys is there's just differences.
They're just differences. So I found it interesting that when you go through Navy pilot training or basic training, students come in, they're responsible for their own studies. They come in, they go into the ready room, they mill about as long as they want. When it's time to fly, they go with the instructor into a briefing space. They brief, they go fly, they come back, they debrief, the student goes home if they have nothing else, or they double turn. The Air Force, they sit around for 12 hours. They sit in the same room for 12 hours. They brief in the same spaces where everyone can hear everything for 12 hours. They double turn, they triple turn. It's painful. Like, for me, it was like, ugh. But it's okay. It was fine.
Well, and culturally, though, there's a little bit of difference because and I'm probably way oversimplifying it, but Navy in their regs is like that big.
Yes.
And then go explore. And then the Air Force is, these are all the things you can't do. Now go have fun.
Absolutely. They'll have the T6, or was it the volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, supplemental volumes 1 and 2. The Air Force, absolutely, it's out of control.
And
It's
so I
funny,
think I appreciated that in the Navy more of like, okay, here's the basic rules.
Navy,
don't kill yourself.
Navy OPNAV 3710 point, 3710.7 alpha. That was it. It was this big. So, but the reason why, in the Navy, you're flying. Typically, if you're in the Navy, when I flew helicopters, you're off the back of the boat. You might be outside their range to get in contact with them, and something happens. It's just you and your crew. You have to be able to make a decision. You've got no choice. So you have to be able to, you have your basic rules, but you have to be able to understand if you have to work outside those rules and you screw up, you're going to be in front of your peers explaining yourself with the fear of
Push-ups.
But this is going to probably be more severe, right? So
right.
more severe. They're not going to, they may or may not hold it against you, but probably not hold it against you, but you're going to be reprimanded and you're going to continue on.
Right.
The Air Force, I don't remember there was a time where I'm out of, if I can make my own decisions, but I'm always, I could talk to the mission on-scene commander. I could talk to home base. I can always have someone to talk to. Was I by myself? Yes. Was I flying over Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever? Yes. But I can always still reach out and talk to someone, unlike in the Navy where you had no one. So I think the Navies, they both teach you leadership, but just in different ways. In the Air Force, they teach you, you can ask other people and they can provide input. But at the end, you still make the decision.
Right.
Sometimes in the Navy, again, you will make the decision, but sometimes you don't have that input. And you better have the experience and the knowledge and the resources and the understanding of a bigger picture in order to make that decision. Because if you both do it wrong, you're still going to be held accountable.
Yep. You
may get a slap on the wrist, walk away, call sign. They're going to hold it against you pretty bad. So that's what I thought the differences were. Yeah, those are the differences. So I always tell people who are unsure whether they want to fly for the Navy or the Air Force, I kind of break that out to them and say, when I came into the Air Force as being a Navy leader, even as a Navy lieutenant, I felt like I had seen more, especially being on the back of the boat, and made more decisions as a young leader than my Air Force counterparts at the same rank. So I felt that I had seen and done more from a leadership aspect because we were deploying on a ship, and, you just see a lot of things that happen. If there's a captain's mast, you're part of that. If you're, we just are given maybe a little bit more responsibility. So I've always appreciated that about the Navy because it really helped. It helped make some of the decisions for me easier, especially when I became a major or I became a lieutenant colonel. I was able to make decisions more, what is it
more
called?
confidence?
Thank you. I was more confident. Thank you. I was more confident in the way I made my decisions because I had this Navy training that helped build that foundation. And again, and I could just tell you just from the YouTube, actually not even from the YouTube community, just being in the Pentagon, I always found that maybe sometimes Air Force officers were just a little bit more hesitant. I want to check this, Reg. I want to check this. I want to do all this. I'm like, dude, pull the trigger. We're on the ground. No one's dying. Like, I would just be like, why are we waiting? Like, in my mind, I've already calculated everything. I've calculated. I'm like, well, what's the problem? And, so
That's cool.
that is.
Well, and I think you need to give yourself credit, though, that you do have a very different, brain and a different capability. And
yeah, a little bit.
But
yeah, some of it, yeah, a little bit. So some of it, some of that was the difference. And I'll be honest real quick before we have to go, because I gotta go in like 9 minutes.
Cool.
But I also think, and I don't know, agree with me or not, I think being a woman in an environment where you're leading, I think is beneficial at times, especially, this goes back to the diversity. You have women in the chain. I found, especially when I became the DO and subsequent acting commander, and this was before I even had kids, I found that there was a side that maybe I don't want to say more compassionate, but I don't know if there's this nurturing side to certain situations that, as much as I wanted to chew your head off, I kind of paused for a second, and it could just be me, because there are times I've yelled at people. You talk to 10% of the people who work for me, they know I can. There's definitely a side that you don't want to see of me. but I think maybe as I got older, or maybe when I had my son, there was this more of this nurturing aspect that I recognized was happening, and I'm like, Meryl, what are you doing?
You're softening.
So soft, crushed
Well,
him. No,
I don't know, because you had talked about, I don't know for me if that has always been there, because like you said, I grew up around guys. I did civil patrol. Like, I had been preparing for this path for a while, and so I'm just really comfortable being around guys. But I also recognize there was a power to being a woman that you could just tap into a little bit.
yes.
That you get
And
hurt a little bit more sometimes. And so I always would use that maybe a little judiciously, because sometimes just the yelling and screaming needs to happen, and that's the appropriate thing. But sometimes the approach of, this is disappointing, but it has more of an impact and more of a, I understand,
yes, yes,
uh,
I would say I would tap into that softer side at times that the situation dictated,
mm-hmm.
because I needed uh and
Only because I know in myself, when someone shows compassion, like, all my defenses are worthless, right? Like, I can take your yelling. You're being kind. Oh no.
right, and then the box of tissues comes out and then you put it there.
Oh, you hit it. Right?
Right. So
I'll do better.
I remember one time I had a student who he did very bad on the flight. He did very bad on the flight. He did really, it was a very bad flight for him. And he knew he was going to fail. He got a hook.
Mhm.
And we're sitting in this big ready room where everyone's debriefing, and he's just having a meltdown. Like, it's one of those cringe-worthy moments, and he's just like, you could see the tears welling up in his eyes, because we're all like type A-ish people in flight training. So when we're failing, it's a big blow, because some of these people have never failed before.
Right?
and
Luckily, I
you're
had the
just
academy to help me with that, break through that barrier. I am not a physicist.
so
Okay.
you could tell, like, for me to yell at him, uh, and I did at the end of this, but I was looking at him. I was seeing this meltdown. His voice was getting raised. I was like, "Stop talking. Go in this room right now." And he looked at me, and all the students looked like, "Oh boy, he's about to get in trouble." And we went into a room, we closed the door, and thank goodness there was some tissues there. I'm like, "All right." I was like, "Let's go, bring it." And he just melted. It was Chernobyl. Like, the effect was just, it was a complete nuclear meltdown.
Yep.
And it's one of those ugly cries, and he's just going on. He's like, "I'm quitting. I don't want to do this." And I just looked at them, and I go, "Are you done?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "All right." And then I kind of give him a pep talk that's kind of nurturing but hardcore. And we talk about, I said, "This is the first time you've failed in something, and I get it." I said, "But I'll be damned if you're gonna quit because of one ride." And I lit into him, like, I lit into him hard and kind of motivated him. And I'm like, "You're gonna effing pass. F this flight. You're gonna learn from this. We're gonna go back up tomorrow. You're gonna get it right, and then we're gonna move on. You're not gonna be the best student, and I'm not asking you to." I said, "But you're better than some of these other knuckleheads around here that walk around with their chest proud. They're full of shit when they talk, and you are going to do well." And he put himself together, and he's like, "Okay." I'm like, "All right, we're going to debrief in here. You clean yourself up, then we're going to go hit it and do well." And he was probably at that point, this was before the first solo, so after the first solo he was probably the bottom student, but then he turned it around, and he didn't become 1, 2, or 3, but he was like 5 or 6 in this class at the
Right.
end. And this is a kid that said, "I wanted to quit. I'm he's just a mess. He's a hot mess. And it's just like, dude, no, so, it was like this nurturing side of me, like, okay, you're going to cry. No other man's going to see you because there's nothing, a man crying like this is just bad. But then I'm going to light a fire in your butt and let you know that, hey, I've been doing this for a couple of years now. I've seen some bad students. You're not one of them. We're going to get through this. You're going to get I've
Right.
seen some crazy students do
Yep.
some crazy stuff and still live. And I was like, we're going to get through this. And, I just remember when he did his selection night, he was just, happy tears, happy, pride in the Air Force, pride in what he did, pride in just staying with it. And he was just, I was like, good. He got heavies. And I'm like, yes. And I think he got what he wanted. So it was even better. So,
That's so cool.
yeah, I'll never forget that. I was like, oh my gosh. I just waited for him.
Well, it is, and there's something beneficial to giving people their space for that, right? Like, you're not going to stop it, but then what you're offering is a perspective, like.
Right. So maybe if I had gone in there with guns blazing, like, oh, you want to quit? Then quit right now. Like if I had said
Right.
that would have been counterproductive.
Yep.
And the years of him training up into this point now have been wasted. Or, he's leaving, he's going, doing something else in the military. He's going to be jaded. He's going to be mad because I've had students who didn't make it through the program come up to me several years later in Korea and say, you're the reason why I didn't make it. And I'm like, bro, what? Are you
Clearly,
kidding me right now?
That was a good decision, son.
Yeah, I was like, oh. Yeah,
I have not changed my mind.
Yeah, I'm like, true story. In Korea, old student comes up. He's like,
Right.
You're the reason why I'm doing this. I'm like, nah, your skills are the reason why you're doing this.
Right. There was a lot going into it. I just happened to be the one who put the paperwork together.
Yeah, well, I didn't even put the paperwork together. He was
or a flight, or
Yeah, it's just so.
I do have a question because I found this interesting in some of the places that I go to and talk to. Like when introducing myself, I just was encouraged by friends to start introducing myself as a pilot and a veteran. And I've had a few veterans, more from the 80s and the 90s, come up and talk about, wow, I've never said that I'm a veteran in my lead off. Like there's this, I don't know if it's a shame thing or it's something they don't talk about in their introduction of who they are to the world. Do you encounter that, or do you feel any of that weirdness? Because I didn't for a while, because I didn't want that to be my only identity. So I'm learning to incorporate that.
Right. So I think it was something that maybe it was a momentary thought for me. I think my biggest concern was, when I talk to people or give speeches, some people wanted me in uniform, which I was highly uncomfortable about, especially in retirement, because I was like, look, I'm closing that chapter of my life. I don't want to walk around in my blues.
Right.
First of all, I have to upkeep that thing.
Right.
No.
And then you have to stay able to wear it.
Yeah, so you don't look
as
like...
a personal trainer, that's probably not a problem, but some of us.
Not you. No, not you.
Yeah.
No, you look great.
Thanks.
Yeah, so that I didn't want to do that. So I told people I'm not wearing my uniform. Unless it's kids, like young kids, I'll wear a flight suit. Sometimes. But the veteran part, I don't think about it too hard, but I'll tell you my opinion now is that I definitely say that. I put it in my brochure for my personal training. I said I'm a military veteran. And the reason why, I mean, you and I, we've been doing this for over half our lives, just about, until we get older, and then there'll be a third. So, and then one day a quarter. Anyway, so
right.
So we, it's something that I'm proud of. I'm proud of being a veteran. It's something that it's something that I volunteered for. I didn't know it would manifest into this, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad of the things I was able to accomplish. I'm glad of the things that I was able to see and help. And yeah, I'm proud of that part. I like when I see other veterans who get, who get kind of shy, and they go, well, I was only in for 4 years. I'm like, that's 4 years more than most of these other chuckleheads. I mean, we make up for less than, what, 1% of the population?
Yep.
So for everyone who has served, number one, thank you for everyone out there who's served. I don't care if it was one day, it was more than most people. And to do that requires just a certain character to be able to. Now, sometimes you say, oh, well, it was either prison or this, but you still made a choice.
Right.
So I think it's awesome, and I think people should not be ashamed of it. There's my long-winded answer.
That's pretty cool.
I use it.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to?
No, I think, I mean, we said a lot in this 2.5 hours.
Yep.
Just for people out there that are wandering, they feel like they're wandering aimlessly. Just keep moving and keep being a person of action every day. Don't, we're in this COVID situation where people are starting to lose steam. Don't lose that steam. Keep being curious. Keep every day challenging yourself and saying, I want to do something better than the day before. Even if it's getting out of your pajamas, which I hope people are not doing still, but I bet you
They're comfy.
So,
it's less
they're comfy.
wash you have to do.
Yes, less wash.
Being
But
environmentally conscious.
But yeah, so, every day I wake up on how can I make myself better, and I'm trying not to stagnate. I think everyone should do the same. Yeah, that's my advice.
So the one question I ask every single person, that I asked this on myself on my solo, what surprises and delights you about yourself?
What surprises and delights me about myself? Oh boy. What surprises me is the fact that as I'm taking a journey, it surprises me at the resilience that I have, and it delights me that I have that. It delights me at the fact that I do not give up. I'm now starting to catch myself when I do things and it doesn't work out the first time. I just sit there and I'm like, what other ways do I attack this problem? And when I was in Ohio in March, I was trying to download something on my computer because some lady took a video, and she watched me for an hour do something and finally got it. And she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, I would have given up 55 minutes ago. And I'm like, nope. So I think that kind of delighted me in her surprise, but I was like, yeah, I'm that type of person that doesn't take no. As I get older, it's easier not to take no. So that delights me. I'm glad I have that trait. It has served me well, and I enjoy that. So, and I keep going. I didn't become like I tell people, I didn't become an astronaut. I didn't get to my dream, but damn, this journey has been freaking awesome. So, I'm still on it. So, yeah, that's what's delightful. There are mornings I wake up going, holy crap, I did that. And it's cool.
Right. Well, because I love that you're pointing that out, because it's almost like it wasn't about being an astronaut. It was the opportunity for you to focus and navigate your way to something really close to that.
Yes.
You wore a spacesuit.
Yes.
You wore the garb, right? You're on the
Yes.
curvature there. I mean, you can't get much closer than that and not be called an astronaut.
Right. So if Elon Musk called me today and said, I want you to fly for SpaceX, Yeah, I do it. Like,
Okay. Okay,
you
we'll
know,
cut this.
I would,
We'll cut this and
I,
send it
I, I
to
would,
him.
I would look at the environment and go, what's it take? Can I do it? Can I do it while doing the family thing? Answer is yes. I'm there. Like, can Flynn homeschool in Alameda or wherever? And I'm like,
Right.
that's the,
Well, okay, we'll just cut this off and send it to him. I'm
pretty,
naive enough to
I'm
do
pretty
it.
good.
So one of the things that I want to point out to folks and celebrate about you is you are joining the speaker circuit, and of course you're doing it your own way. Thumbs up. How do we find out about you? Whether it's the physical training, like how can we find you?
Oh, so one thing, thank you for asking. This is what I do poorly. I have a website, merryltengesdal.com. So it's all one word, my first name, MERRYLTENGESDAL.com. I'm on Instagram, YouTube_personal_trainer788. So you can just type in my name, it'll come up with a picture of me. The reason why I have 788 in there is that's my YouTube pilot number. So anytime you see 788 at the end of a number, whether I'm playing Pokemon Go or doing something else, you'll see.
The secret's out.
The secret is out. So I'm pilot number 788, and you can also follow me on Facebook as well. And you'll see that I don't monitor Facebook as much. And if you're really feeling froggy and feeling like you want to see what millennials do, I do have a TikTok account, and I do have some videos of me dancing on there. So
I
down.
give that all to you. I don't understand TikTok, so, but I also
TikTok's
don't.
fun.
I also don't dance. Maybe you can teach me.
All right. So next time we see each other, we're doing a TikTok. Do the whoa.
I don't understand it. I mean, that's okay. I have now dated myself, but I've now become an old person. Cool. Gosh, so I'm excited to see where you're going with your work, and we probably could have talked for another 2 hours. Maybe we get to someday on stage or something together. We get to
let's
geniuses.
let's put that energy out there. The other thing, what I was gonna say, I do have a YouTube channel also, so you'll see that if you click on some of my Instagram stuff. I try to do. I'm hitting a lot of different things, but I have a couple of videos, either workouts or just motivational things for thoughts as I ride my bike, and then I talk about. So more of that to follow as I continue to build what I'm doing.
And they're really good. I got to see one, so thank you. Well, thank you for saying yes. Yeah, I know it's a complete surprise, and I'm always excited for people who just say, yeah, I'll come hang out and talk. So totally appreciate it, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Dee. And